Folks, did you hear the gospel lesson? Blessed are the poor. How many of you are poor? Don't raise your hand. Because you know what? Unless you're living in a grass hut in New Guinea somewhere, you're not poor. You all have clothes on. You all were able to get to church. There are people who can't do that. Poverty is a lot what you're used to seeing around you. If you walk into a room and everybody's laughing, what's your mood? You're sitting in there, everybody's laughing. What are you going to do? You got to start smiling anyway, aren't you? What the heck's going on? Hey, all right. Or if everybody's going, pretty soon you're going to be the same way, right? The same thing is when you are surrounded by a group of people. If you think everybody else is rich and you're poor, and other people are complaining, well, you're going to feel poor. Even though this is the gathering of the multimillionaires club. We know people, we have heard people speaking who have millions of dollars and think they're broke because they couldn't buy another yacht this year. Or somebody else has $1 billion. What's poverty? Poverty is up here. It isn't really out here. It isn't really what you have. It's how you think about it. Blessed are the merciful. How many of you are merciful? Don't raise your hand. Because I dare say a number of us have been willing to criticize other people and have just torn them apart because they have done this stupid, or they have worn those clothes, or they have done this that I don't like. Is that merciful? I dare say the person you criticize doesn't feel like you were very merciful. They may even get angry. Is that loving? Not particularly. And does it produce good results? Do the people you tear apart ever get better? Not very often. So why does Jesus say, blessed are all these people that we're not? He's trying to point out that you would be better off if you were these things. Blessed are the poor isn't necessarily that they have no money. It's the poor in spirit, the ones who feel like they're hopeless, the ones who feel like they can't get anywhere, the ones that feel like their efforts are not valued. Those are the poor people, aren't they? When you feel like your word means something to somebody, doesn't that feel really good? When have you felt the best about yourself in your life? Wasn't it when somebody said, I don't know what I would do without you. You are so precious to me. You have really helped me. Aren't those the time when you feel really good? It's not usually the time. I mean, we all would feel really good if we won the lottery, right? Let's concede that. But does that really say anything about the kind of person you are? Well, that's a matter of luck, You could just as well have walked in front of a car. It wouldn't have made any difference as far as your fortune is concerned. But when somebody loves you, when somebody appreciates you, when somebody says, you have really made a difference to me, those are precious moments that you don't forget very quickly. So, if you are a humble person, you don't demand attention. You don't have to be the most important person in the room, but you are well appreciated. That's a person worth being, isn't it? Are you worth being? Blessed are the merciful. They'll receive mercy. Do you want mercy for yourself? I hate to tell you how many people say, I don't need no mercy. The President of the United States says, I've never had anything to repent of. You know? What kind of sickness is behind that? How much arrogance can you bear? And did it get you anywhere? I don't hear anybody complaining about you on public television. When we take the lower end, when we sit as another parable said, at the foot of the table rather than demanding to be at the head of the table, people notice that. When you go to a potluck, how many of you are ready to jump up and be front in line? I'll tell you what, when I was your age, I was ready to be there. I wanted that food. Yeah. Did people notice that? Oh, you betcha. You betcha. Oh, that Bob, he was always right in the front line. Now I'm in the back of the line. Do people notice that? Sometimes. But it also means that I didn't get their share. I didn't take that last bit. Now, to be sure, when everybody's had theirs, it's a funny thing, I always seem to get mine. Don't you? If you let someone else go first, if you let someone else be more important, are they likely to be on your side? And if you make them be less important, are they likely to stay on your side? You know, God's will isn't just a bunch of rules. Rules, you know, we feel confined by rules, don't we? You know, somebody gives you a whole long list of do's and don'ts, you kind of feel like, geez, I can, even if I can read all of these, let alone do them all. But when they say, look, do what you feel is right, but only do what you feel is right, that opens the door pretty wide, doesn't it? Do what you want, but want what is right. Don't focus on yourself. Focus on the God who can raise you from the dead. Now, people will often say things like that. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ. They say it so fast that they're not thinking any of it, right? Have you ever done that? I know I have, haven't you? You know, we run through the prayers. I wrote an article a number of years ago for the Lutheran that went, "Come Lord Jesus, be our guest, and let thy gifts to us be blessed." A new record, we did that in 2 seconds. And did you think any of it? Did it occur to you that you have just asked God to be sitting down with you as you were fighting and arguing over the food? Does it occur to you that when you are blessing something, you ask God's presence? And then we go ahead and do what we usually do. On Maundy Thursday, we have an agape dinner, which is much like the first Holy Communions were held in the very earliest of the churches. They would go to people's houses, they would have a meal, and they would celebrate Holy Communion as a part of the meal. That's what Jesus did, isn't it? If you really recognize that Jesus is sitting at the table, probably you would be feeling and acting a little differently than we usually do. Usually we sit there with one other person, maybe a family, sometimes all by yourselves, but you're never all by yourself. God is always with you. Is it really something we would do when we are busy when we're criticizing somebody else or when we're building up our own self. Is that something you would do if you knew Jesus was sitting right next to you? God calls us to a different kind of world. He says that there are three things that last forever: faith, hope, love. And the greatest of these is love. And what is love? Love hasn't got anything to do with sex. It hasn't got anything to do with affection even. It isn't about who the other person is. It's about who are you. Are you a loving person? Regardless of whoever else is. If you were an apple tree, would you give them lemons if you didn't like them? No, an apple tree gives apples. It doesn't care who gets it. And a loving person just gives love. Try it out sometime. Because I have to keep asking God to make me be one. Because it isn't easy to do all the time. We forget that we are called to be God's loving people who give ourselves for each other. The poverty, the criminality even, doesn't make much difference when we're focusing on Him. What makes a difference is, does He love me? Do I love Him? Do I love you? And God's answer always is, come to me, you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you peace. I give you hope. I give you the love that you find hard to find. Thanks be to God.